So, so I don't mind when you have to make, decisions. You got to take a personal day occasionally. You got to do what's right for you. I'm going to be talking about that today in 217. Anybody in here also in my 217 class? Yeah, we're going to be talking about that a little bit today. But back to the grind, though. Back to the grind. All right. So I've loaded homework 9 into Blackboard. It's due next Wednesday at 1 p.m. And if I remember correctly, that assignment has 5 questions. And 4? Okay, 4 questions. And we're going to be today covering 2 of the things that are in that assignment. We'll get to the rest of it on Friday and Monday. But then the other kind of long-term thing on your radar is the project. And I still have yet to field a single question from students about the project. It makes me wonder, have you just figured it out without any help, or have you not started yet? Maybe some have figured it out, some haven't started, but I really think it's best if you get going on that project. It'll take less time if you start early, because then you'll be able to ask questions when you get stuck. And if you wait to the last minute, then you won't be able to ask questions. Well, you can. It's just that I'll be getting questions from everybody, or maybe it'll be the middle of the night, and you're just not likely to get the same kind of reply from me. It's just easier on this project, by the way, for you to come to my office and show me your spreadsheet, or for us to have a Teams meeting and you to share your screen, and for us to look at the spreadsheet together. It's hard to type in text descriptions related to calculations. So if you have a concept question, you can type that easily enough. But if you want me to look at your spreadsheet, it's best for you to bring it into my office. So those are the announcements. Any questions about that? Okay, as a reminder, the recorded lectures for class 22 and 23, those are still on YouTube. And if you didn't go through them, I really would encourage you to, especially before the next exam, because there will be questions on the exam related to those concepts. But today we're moving on to cost effectiveness analysis. And like benefit cost analysis, cost effectiveness analysis is often used for projects that aren't profitable, but there's still some reason to do it anyway, generally societal benefits. So this comes from chapter 9 in your book. And I'd encourage you to review the textbook and just kind of get that perspective on these concepts in addition to what we'll be talking about today. Has anybody seen speed cameras before? Like unmanned speed cameras. They're sometimes set up to catch people either going too fast or going into intersections when the light is red. So I used to live in the United Arab Emirates, and there you never get pulled over for speeding. They just have cameras, and then when you renew your registration at the end of the year, you have to settle your debts. And usually for speeding, it's about $100, and some people would pay thousands and thousands of dollars on their speeding tickets because they just didn't know that they were getting them. Here in the United States, most jurisdictions, it's not legal to have cameras doing like tickets. There has to be a person on the other end of the camera in real time, live, recording it for most jurisdictions. But why do they do that? Like, what's the point of red light cameras or speeding cameras? Is it just to generate the fines that the municipality is collecting, or is there maybe a broader, more fundamental reason for that kind of enforcement? Well, obviously it has to do with the motivation is safety, because if people are in the habit of running through intersections when the light is red and the other cars should be coming because they have green in their direction, it's unsafe. So it would be hard to just analyze this in terms of profitability, because the purpose of the project isn't to generate a rate of return. And so we wouldn't necessarily do internal rate of return analysis, external rate of return analysis, when the main motivator here is non-financial. Safety is the motivator. And as we talked about with benefit cost analysis, some benefits are difficult to enumerate. Like, it's hard to put a dollar value on certain things. Like, think about this traffic camera. The benefit of having it there is that people are running the red light less often. So now how do we turn that into dollars? You know, like we could do some extrapolation on the reduction in crashes and the dollar, like the cost of repairing the crashes. We could do some extrapolation to find out the reduction in injuries and lost productivity, but it all becomes kind of far-fetched and there's multiple layers of estimation, and so there's potentially a lot of error there. So we have sometimes either a hard time identifying all of the benefits or quantifying all of the benefits. And so sometimes there is an advantage of methods that can quantify how efficient some service is without bothering to enumerate the dollar value of the benefits. And so B2C analysis is great when the benefits already have some financial aspect to them. But in a lot of cases, like let's say passport services, the State Department, when it's operating, will issue passports. And they don't issue passports in order to get a profit. Like you do have to pay a fee to get a passport, but like the real purpose of it is just so that you can have the enjoyment or the necessity of international travel. Or like in the case of medical services, there are not-for-profit hospitals that operate just to improve people's lives. They're vanishingly rare. Most of the hospitals and medical establishment these days exist to generate a profit, but all of the benefits of, let's say, a nurse taking care of a patient, there's more benefits than the payment that the patient gives to the hospital. Like from the patient's perspective, their health is worth more than what they're paying for the services. You're not having to pay the full value of what you get. So like if you break your arm and it's going to get like infected and you're going to have to get it amputated, you know, maybe your hospital bill is $20,000, but your arm is way more valuable than $20,000. And so it's hard sometimes to identify precisely what the benefit would be. And so to get around that issue, we can introduce the idea of cost effectiveness analysis. It's often applied in service sector projects and specifically in non-profit service sector projects. And by the service sector, what we're talking about is things that generate intangibles. It's not physically, you can't put your hands on the value of the thing that's either being offered or produced. So it could be accounting services or, you know, your exam for licensure for your driver's license. So intangibles, service sector. Healthcare, accounting, police, safety training, financial services. And we use this method when it's hard to estimate the full impact of the benefits. So the benefits of traffic cameras, the benefits of offering people vaccinations are sometimes hard to estimate the full consequences of that. Now you could quantify like the number of accidents that are reverted or the number of deaths that are prevented, and how, like, if police aren't writing tickets, then they can focus on more important things like solving property crime or violence crime or so on. There are benefits, but it's just sometimes those benefits aren't really closely related to dollar value. So instead of the B to C, sometimes we come up with C to E ratio. And C to E is where in the numerator we put the costs, and then in the denominator we put some measure of effectiveness. So it could be, for example, the effectiveness is the number of passports that are issued by a certain office. And so if we knew like their operating costs, and we know the number of passports that they issue in a day, then we could effectively calculate the dollars of cost per passport issued. And so the units in the CE ratio can sometimes actually have a physical meaning. But then the real value of it is comparing different locations. And so if you had passports being issued in Philadelphia, in San Francisco, in New Orleans, you could see how effective each of those different offices are by looking at their costs of operation and then some common measure of effectiveness, and then you could rank them. And what you'd want to do is you'd put at the top of the list the location with the smallest C to E ratio. So a small C to E is good. Remember when we were talking about B to C? Big is good, because you want to maximize the benefits and minimize the costs. Here, we want to have a small ratio because we want to have C be low and E be high. Low costs, high effectiveness. So let's just do an illustration, and I'll use Excel for this one. This is an example of data as you'd typically be given when you need to do a cost effectiveness analysis. Let's say that there's different offices across the state of West Virginia that are processing commercial driver's license renewals. So if each of the offices was open 160 hours a month, let's go through the process of identifying which office is the most efficient and which is the least efficient. But then where this method really shines is when you apply a budget limit. When there's like rationing to be done, and you want to maximize the amount of good that you can do with only a certain amount of money that's available. So here we're comparing Beckley, Huntington, Charleston, Weston, and Richwood. And what we know is their operational cost in terms of dollars per hour that they're opened. And so that could reflect the personnel expenses, that could reflect their utilities, their lease for the real estate, and so on. This is lumping together all of their operational costs together in $1 per hour value. And then as a measure of their effectiveness, we're looking at how many licenses per month they're processing. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just copy this data and paste it over to Excel. You won't be able to do that necessarily. Well, maybe you could. But it's okay just to watch this one. You will get practice with today's in-class exercise on the same thing. So if you just want to watch this first one, that's fine. So let me paste it. Make the columns wide enough here. Okay. So I've got the operational cost and the effectiveness. I'm going to put in another column here because what I want to do is find out how many dollars per month each office is costing. Because right now I've got mixed units for time. I've got dollars per hour and licenses per month. So I need to make it common between the two. So I want to make the operation cost in terms of dollars per month. In dollars per month. All right. And our statement here said that there's 160 operational hours per month. So I'm going to have the cost in dollars per hour multiplied by 160 for each office. So now I know that Beckley costs $108,000 per year, Huntington is $72,000 per year, and so on. Oh, per month, not per year, per month. Okay. Now I already knew the licenses per month that are being issued, so what I can do now is I can calculate the C to E ratio in terms of dollars per license renewed. All right, because here's my C, here's my E, and if you look at the units, it's dollars per month divided by licenses per month. So let me write this on the board here. So dollars per month divided by licenses per month. So the per month part of it cancels out. So all we're left with is dollars of cost per license renewed. So cost divided by E. So Beckley is costing $77 per license renewed. And at the low end, the Huntington office is super efficient because people from Huntington are the best, right? All right. So this is all hypothetical data, by the way. Any questions so far? All right. So the next step here is we want to rank it from most efficient to least efficient if we have a budget limit. we have up to $2,300 per hour that we can spend. And so the question is, if we can do $2,300 per hour, should we do Beckley, Huntington, and Charleston? So if I highlight those three the way they are, down here at the bottom it tells me the sum. See how the sum says 22, 25? Should I do those? Or should I do Charleston, Weston, Richwood? Well, that's 2,500, so that's over the limit. 2,300 is the limit. So what about Weston, Richwood, and Huntington? Okay, that's under the limit, but like instead of just randomly selecting a bunch of them, the systematic way of doing this is I'm going to copy the data like I had it, and then I'm just going to paste the values. Paste the values. And so now it's not calculations anymore. It's just like the numbers from above, since I paste the values. And now I want to sort it from the lowest cost to the highest cost. I'm going to put this back to currency. Okay, so I want to have, if Huntington is the most efficient, I should definitely have that office going, because you know they're the most efficient, so it makes the most sense for us to spend money on them. And then Charleston should be next in terms of priority, because they're the second most efficient office. Third most efficient, let's open up Weston, and so on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this, sort.
It was on data. It's in the middle on it.
There it is, yeah. The buttons just didn't jump out at me. So I want it from lowest to highest, which I think is A to Z. So let me click here, and it's sorted everything. So now it's Huntington, Charleston, Weston, Richwood, and Beckley. Beckley is at the bottom because it's, you know, you're spending the most per licenses that are renewed. Okay, so now I've got the most efficient at the top, but there's one more column I want to add here, and that's cumulative cost in terms of dollars per hour. So if I only have open the Huntington office, then the cost per hour is $450 per hour. So this row is just saying, like, if only the Huntington office is open. If the Charleston and the Huntington are open, then the cumulative cost would be the $450 plus $1,100. So this row represented Huntington only. This row represents Charleston and Huntington. Okay, so now if I continue dragging this formula down, it'll always look at the cell above it and the cell that's over here on the left. So this next one will add 1,550 and 650, which is 2,200. And this one represents Weston, Charleston, and Huntington. Those three offices being open. If I try to add Richwood, I'm over the limit. So the answer here is can't also bring Richwood online because of the budget limit. Didn't like that minus sign that I started off with, so I have to put in this quote. Now it'll be fun. All right, so anybody have questions about this analysis that we've done? What we've identified is how efficient is each of these offices, and our grand conclusion is if the budget limit is $2,300 per hour, then the following offices should be prioritized: Huntington, Charleston, and Weston. Because how many licenses we could renew each month would be the sum of those. So the total number of licenses per month if those 3 offices are open, will be, now let me just add these 3 together. Huntington, Charleston, Weston, 31,400. And so any other combination that is under our budget limit would have yielded fewer licenses per month total that could be processed. So that, in a nutshell, is cost effectiveness analysis. Does anybody have questions about that? Okay, let me hand out today's in-class exercise. Okay, so the scenario for your in-class exercise is, let's say you've got a budget of $5 million per year and you're trying to pick like which organizations should be funded in order to maximize the amount of poachers that are arrested each year. Like all of these different organizations are trying to arrest poachers who are poaching gorillas. And so what you need to do is follow the same technique that was just illustrated. So I've got like the A, B, C, and D. So what you need to do is calculate the total cost in terms of dollars per year for each of the organizations. And then also calculate the cost in terms of dollars per poacher arrested in the same way that we just did for that example. Identify which organization is most effective, and then sort on Excel from most efficient at the top down to least efficient at the bottom, and find out if you have a $5 million budget limit and no partial funding is available, then which organizations should be selected, and then how many poachers will be arrested. Double check what you're doing.
what that episode right there predicts on the so what I'm gonna do is
Maybe I'm just looking for
you leave the savings around, you find out how much you have left, and you leave the savings, and you find the income. That number is- I basically subtracted the income from the expenses, and then added that to the savings.
So the folks at Habitat XP run a tight ship. Let's see, how do they do that? I guess it's because they only pay their employees $14,000 a year, right? Low labor costs. All right. So what we did was calculated, we knew like their cost per person per year. We know how many people they have on staff. So we calculated their total cost per organization on an annual basis. And then from that, and knowing the number of poachers that they arrest each year, we calculate the cost effectiveness ratio. So that's the cost to effectiveness. And so Habitat XP, based on their expenses and the number of poachers, it's like $2,100 per year to catch a poacher, whereas Gorilla Watch was $36,000. So what we do then is, copied all of that data, Control C, and then pasted special where we just wanted the values and not the formulas. And the reason why I did that is that like when I reorder it, it's possible that sometimes when you're reordering data that the formulas can get screwed up. So it's just easier, I think, sometimes to paste the values rather than, if you paste, rather than pasting the values, then what you're pasting is the equations, and the relative references can get messed up and so on. So then the last thing that we do here besides sorting is we find out the cumulative amount spent for each organization. So if we have just Habitat XP, $168,000 per year. So this second row is presuming that we have both Habitat XP and Helping Hands funded, and to fund them both would be $766,000. And then if we bring Save the Forest online, suddenly now we're spending $4.5 million, but we couldn't do EcoPlanet or Gorilla Watch because that would put us over the budget. So the maximum number of poachers that we can arrest based on this budget limit is 495 poachers per year, and that's assuming that past trends continue, that their future performance is the same as their past performance has been. So anybody have questions about cost effectiveness analysis, the method in particular, or anything about this illustration? The other question that I had for you is on the back side of the page there. Let me pull it up on screen. The reason why I ask you this question is because there's a huge part of the project is being able to calculate this thing. So I want you to have some practice calculating this thing so that you understand the concept when it's time to do the project. You know, on the project, what you're doing is you're finding out year after year how much money you are going to have, taking into account your spending, your earning, your savings, and so on. So cumulative savings balance is something you're going to be determining in the project. And so what this is saying is last year you had $25,684, and then that amount is going to earn 5.2% interest. And then you also have some new money coming in. And the new money coming in is going to be the difference between your income and your expenses. So the difference between the two, by definition, is saved. Anything that you earn that you don't spend, you still have. And so you've saved it. So what I want you to do is find out at the end of this year, when you account for last year's balance, the interest on last year's balance, and the new money that's saved, how much will you have in your account? So if you make $64,834 and you spend $59,354, what that means is that you're going to be saving a certain amount. How much are you saving? $5,480.50. So that's this year's savings. And so the cumulative savings balance will be last year's balance plus the interest on last year's balance and the new money that's saved. The new money that's saved, you're just putting in there right now. So you don't earn any interest on it if you're just putting it in right now. You only earn the interest on how much was in there at the beginning of the year, not at the end of the year. So cumulative savings balance, $32,501.10. Anybody have questions about that? Short term is the homework assignment number 9, which you could start on today. You've already got a couple of things that you could solve on that. What I really hope you'll get started on is the project. I really am getting lonely up in my office hours. I wish you'd bring me a spreadsheet to look up. That would just cheer me up if you brought me a spreadsheet to look at. So please do, anytime I can help. See you Friday.